Hello and welcome to English Chapter, where stories speak louder than lessons. Today's story isn't just about success. It's about the journey, the struggle, and the spark that can change everything. Before Starbucks became a global icon, it was just a tiny store in Seattle. No espresso, no frappuccino, just a dream, and three friends with a passion for quality coffee. But behind every brand you know, there's a story you don't. This is where it all began. It was 1971 in Seattle, Washington. The rain was falling, as usual, painting the streets in gray. Most people walked with their heads down, rushing to stay dry. But inside a small shop near Pike Place Market, something warm was brewing, something that would change the world. The store was small. There were no plush chairs, no jazz music playing softly in the background. There wasn't even a menu. But the smell, rich, roasted coffee, pulled people in from the cold. This was the first Starbucks. But let's rewind, because this isn't just a story about coffee. It's about three men, one vision, and the quiet beginning of a revolution. Jerry Baldwin was a teacher. Zed Siegel was a history professor. Gordon Bowker was a writer. None of them had experience in business. But they had something powerful in common: curiosity, creativity, and a deep love for coffee. Back then, Americans didn't really care about coffee. It came in tin cans. It was cheap, bitter, and lifeless. People drank it out of habit, not passion. But Jerry, Zev, and Gordon believed something was missing. They believed coffee could be more than just a drink. It could be a ritual, a moment of peace, a spark of connection. Inspired by Peet's Coffee in Berkeley, California, they decided to bring high-quality coffee beans to Seattle. They weren't thinking about building an empire. They just wanted to share something they loved. They opened the first Starbucks store in 1971. The name came from Starbuck, the first mate in Moby Dick. The logo? A twin-tailed mermaid from a 16th-century Norse woodcut. It was strange, bold, and different, just like the brand would become. But in those early days, Starbucks didn't sell coffee drinks. No lattes, no cappuccinos. Just beans, equipment, and knowledge. The store was more like a library of coffee, offering classes, tastings, and guidance on how to brew the perfect cup at home. Customers would walk in curious and walk out changed. Still, success didn't come overnight. The business grew slowly. Jerry handled the books. Gordon worked on branding. Zev talked to customers. They poured their time into making it right. They were chasing profit. They were chasing quality. And then came a man named Howard Schultz. In 1981, Schultz was working as head of marketing for a Swedish housewares company. He noticed that one small store in Seattle was ordering a surprising amount of coffee filters. Curious, he flew out to see what the buzz was about. The moment he stepped into Starbucks, something clicked. He saw more than just beans. He saw a brand with soul, a company that cared about its product and its people. He wanted in. He joined Starbucks a year later as director of retail operations and marketing. But this is where the story takes a twist, because Howard didn't want to just sell beans. He had a bigger dream. In 1983, Howard took a trip to Milan, Italy, and that's where everything changed. In the early morning, walking through cobblestone streets, he noticed something. Coffee wasn't just a drink in Italy. It was a lifestyle. Cafes were everywhere. People gathered around espresso bars, laughing, talking, connecting. The baristas knew the customers by name. There was community, warmth, humanity. It wasn't just about caffeine. It was about connection. Howard came back electrified. He wanted to bring that culture to America. He believed Starbucks could be more than a store. It could be an experience. But when he pitched the idea to the original founders, they said no. Howard was heartbroken, but not defeated. In 1985, he left Starbucks and started his own company, Il Giornale. The goal? To bring Italian-style espresso bars to the United States. He hustled hard. He pitched investors. He knocked on doors. He gave everything he had, and after months of rejection, he finally raised enough money to open his first store. Il Giornale was a hit. People loved it. It was warm, personal, inviting. Everything Howard had seen in Italy recreated in Seattle. And then, fate stepped in. In 1987, the original Starbucks founders decided to sell the company. Howard bought it. Il Giornale became Starbucks, and the journey began. With Howard as CEO, Starbucks began to transform. He took the soul of Il Giornale and the quality of the original Starbucks and blended them into something new. They started serving espresso drinks, lattes, cappuccinos. The aroma of fresh coffee filled every store. The brand wasn't just about the product anymore. It was about the feeling. He introduced something revolutionary, the idea of the third place. Not home, not work, something in between. A cozy, welcoming environment where people could sit, relax, connect, or just be alone with their thoughts. It worked. One store became 10. 10 became 50. Soon, Starbucks was no longer a local shop. It was a movement. Starbucks didn't just sell coffee, they sold experience. The stores played jazz. The lighting was soft. The baristas smiled and remembered your name. Customers came for the coffee, but stayed for the comfort. Howard believed that every cup was a conversation, a moment of presence, a pause in a busy world. He trained his employees, called partners, not just in coffee, but in care. The goal wasn't to be fast. It was to be personal. In a world growing louder, Starbucks became a quiet voice of warmth. By the early 1990s, Starbucks was growing fast. New locations, new cities, new states. People lined up for their morning coffee like it was part of their identity. The green logo began to appear everywhere. But Howard stayed focused. He made decisions not just for growth, but for integrity. He offered health insurance to part-time workers, stock options for baristas. He built a company that cared, and people. Starbucks wasn't just building stores. It was building trust. By the time the 90s ended, Starbucks had laid its foundation. It had heart, it had vision, and it had a leader who believed that business wasn't just about money. It was about meaning. But the real journey was just beginning. In the chapters to come, we'll explore how Starbucks faced challenges, crisis, innovation, and global expansion. But none of that would have been possible without this beginning. 3 men, 1 store, and a 4th man with a dream so big, it woke up the world. And all of it, every store, every cup, every conversation, began with a simple question. What if coffee could be something more? Sometimes, the right person walks into the right place at exactly the right moment, and everything changes. Howard Schultz didn't invent coffee. He didn't invent Starbucks, but he gave it something far more powerful, a vision. And that vision took Starbucks from a small shop in Seattle to every corner of the world. Howard Schultz was born in 1953 in Brooklyn, New York. His family wasn't rich, not even close. They lived in a housing project. The kind of place where walls were thin and dreams felt even thinner. His father worked a series of low-paying jobs: truck driver, factory worker, laborer. No benefits, no job security, no retirement. One day, Howard's dad slipped on ice while delivering diapers. He was injured, and just like that, the paycheck stopped coming. There was no insurance, no support. The family struggled. Howard watched, and he never forgot. He didn't grow up thinking about coffee. He grew up thinking about dignity, about how unfair life could be, about how hard his parents worked and how little they got in return. That experience would shape everything. Howard wasn't the smartest kid in class, but he was hungry for something more, for a way out. He played sports, football, basketball, and earned a scholarship to Northern Michigan University. First in his family to go to college. He studied communications, took odd jobs to survive, and worked hard. When he graduated, he didn't have a plan, but he had ambition, and ambition can take you places. His first job out of college? Xerox, selling office equipment. Not glamorous, but it taught him how to sell, how to listen, and how to hustle. But he wanted more. He moved on to a Swedish kitchenware company called Hammerplast. It was there that he noticed something strange. One little coffee shop in Seattle was buying a huge number of drip filters. That store? Curious. Howard flew to Seattle in 1981 to meet the people behind Starbucks. He walked into the store, and he felt it instantly. The smell of roasted beans, the care in how the staff explained the product, the focus on quality, the mission. It wasn't flashy, but it was real. He was hooked. He saw something the founders hadn't yet fully seen, a brand with soul. He joined Starbucks the next year as head of marketing. It was a small company, only 4 stores. But Howard had big ideas, and one trip to Italy would bring those ideas into focus. In 1983, Howard visited Milan on a buying trip. It changed his life. He noticed that coffee in Italy was not just coffee, it was culture. Espresso bars were everywhere. People stood at counters, chatting with baristas, sipping their drinks. It was fast. It was social. It was ritual. He saw community. He saw people who felt seen, heard, known, and he saw something else: opportunity. Why couldn't America have this too? Not just coffee, but connection. A warm, inviting place between home and work. The place that felt like yours. Howard came back from Italy with fire in his soul. He pitched the idea to Starbucks founders. He explained the potential, the vision, the magic. But they didn't see it. The founders of Starbucks loved coffee, but they didn't want to serve drinks. They wanted to sell beans and machines. To them, becoming a cafe felt like a betrayal of their original mission. Howard was crushed, but not discouraged. He left Starbucks and decided to do it himself. He called his new company Il Giornale, named after an Italian newspaper. He believed in the idea so much, he risked everything. His future, his pride, even his friendships. He pitched 242 investors. Only 25 said yes. But that was enough. Il Giornale opened its first store in 1986. The line was out the door. Il Giornale wasn't just a coffee bar. It was an experience. Italian espresso, classical music, baristas trained not just to serve, but to care. Howard made sure every detail matched the vision he saw in Milan. And people loved it. It was different, friendly, human. Howard's dream was working. But then, fate called again. In 1987, the original Starbucks founders decided to sell the company. Howard didn't hesitate. He gathered investors, raised $3.8 million, and bought Starbucks. Il Giornale became Starbucks. Howard Schultz became CEO, and the mission shifted from selling beans to changing lives. Under Howard's leadership, Starbucks transformed. He didn't just expand locations, he expanded purpose. He trained employees, now called partners, to be ambassadors of warmth. He created a consistent experience across stores. He brought in music, seating, and a personal touch. Starbucks became more than a place to buy coffee. It became a third place, not home, not work, but somewhere safe, peaceful, and welcoming. It felt like yours, even when it was crowded. Howard wasn't just a dreamer. He was a builder. He led the company with fierce focus. In 1992, he took Starbucks public. Wall Street doubted it. A coffee company? Really? But the IPO was a success. By the mid-90s, Starbucks was adding hundreds of stores a year. Not through ads, but through word of mouth, through consistency, through loyalty. Every store had the same soul, and yet, Howard never forgot where he came from. He gave part-time employees health care. He offered stock options. He made sure baristas were treated with respect. He remembered his father, the man who had no safety net, and he vowed to do better. Howard always said, "We're not in the coffee business serving people. We're in the people business serving coffee." That belief shaped every decision. He supported ethical sourcing. He partnered with coffee farmers. He cared about community service, education, and sustainability. To him, success without values wasn't success at all. Even as the company grew into a giant, he insisted on holding on to heart. He believed a company could make money and do good, not one or the other, both. That belief made Starbucks different. In 2008, when the world faced an economic crisis, Starbucks suffered too. Sales dropped, stores closed, stock plummeted. Howard came back as CEO again. And what did he do first? He closed every store in America. Just for a few hours. Why? To retrain baristas on how to make a perfect espresso. Because when the world goes dark, you go back to the light that started it all. Back to quality. Back to purpose. Back to people. Howard Schultz didn't invent coffee. He didn't start Starbucks. But he gave it something powerful. A soul. He believed coffee could bring people together. He believed a store could feel like home. He believed a company could care and still grow. That belief built one of the most recognized brands on earth. But more than that, it built trust. It built warmth. It built connection. It built something worth remembering. And this was just the beginning. Howard Schultz had a vision. He had seen it in Milan, a coffee bar where people gathered, where espresso wasn't rushed, it was honored, where a cup of coffee meant connection, not just caffeine. He came back to Seattle with fire in his chest. But when he pitched this vision to the Starbucks founders, they didn't see it. They respected Howard, but they didn't want to turn their bean shop into a cafe. To them, espresso bars were a distraction, maybe even a mistake. Howard was crushed. He had poured his heart into this dream, but the door was shut. Still, he couldn't let it go. Some people see rejection as the end. Howard saw it as a challenge. Howard had a decision to make. Stay with Starbucks, follow the rules, and silence the vision, or leave everything behind and try to build it himself. Most people would have stayed, played it safe, avoided the risk. But Howard wasn't most people. He believed in what he saw in Italy. He believed it could change the way America and maybe the world experienced coffee. So he walked away. No team, no funding, just an idea, a stubborn heart, and a dream too strong to ignore. In 1985, Howard started working on his own coffee company. He called it Il Giornale, after the Italian newspaper he read every morning in Milan. The plan? To create warm, welcoming coffee bars inspired by Italian espresso culture. But starting a business takes money. Howard needed investors. He needed believers. He pitched his idea to 242 people. Most of them laughed. Some walked out. Others smiled politely and said, "No thanks." He kept going. Pitch after pitch, meeting after meeting, rejection after rejection. Finally, 25 investors said yes. That was enough. Il Giornale was born. The first Il Giornale Café opened in downtown Seattle in 1986. It was everything Howard had imagined. Quick espresso service, elegant counters, opera music in the background, baristas in white shirts, Italian phrases on the wall, warm lighting, real human connection, and people loved it. They didn't just walk in for caffeine. They came for calm, for rhythm, for ritual. Il Giornale didn't sell just coffee. It sold moments. It was proof that Howard wasn't crazy, that his dream wasn't impossible. And then came the opportunity of a lifetime. In 1987, the original Starbucks founders were ready to move on. They offered to sell their 6 stores, the roasting facilities, and the brand to Howard. The price? $3.8 million. Howard didn't have that kind of money, but he knew one thing. He couldn't let Starbucks go. He picked up the phone. He called investors. He told his story again. This time, they listened. This wasn't just a business opportunity. It was destiny. And just like that, Il Giornale bought Starbucks. Howard Schultz became CEO of the company he once had to leave behind. Howard didn't hesitate. He rebranded Il Giornale under the Starbucks name. But this wasn't the same Starbucks anymore. This Starbucks had espresso. It had soul. It had the culture of Milan and the heartbeat of Seattle. It had a mission: to be the third place in people's lives, not just home or work, but somewhere in between. Howard wasn't just opening coffee shops. He was creating community, one cup at a time. Now that he had control, Howard could finally build the Starbucks he dreamed of. He focused on 3 things: quality coffee. Every bean was sourced with care, roasted with precision, served with pride. Customer experience. Stores had to feel welcoming. Every touch mattered. Music, furniture, lighting, all carefully chosen. People. Employees weren't workers. They were partners. He gave them stock, benefits, and respect. Howard believed that happy partners created happy customers, and the results showed. In the late 1980s, Starbucks grew steadily across the Pacific Northwest. But Howard wanted more. In 1990, Starbucks took a big step, opening outside Seattle. The first stop? Portland, Oregon, then Chicago, then Vancouver, Canada. Each new store followed the same formula: quality, culture, and care. No flashy ads, no gimmicks, just word of mouth. Customers came back again and again, not because it was fast or cheap, but because it felt personal. By 1992, Starbucks had 165 stores, and then it went public. In June 1992, Starbucks became a publicly traded company. Wall Street was skeptical. Could a premium coffee shop really succeed on a large scale? But investors saw something special: a brand people loved, a leader with passion, a company with a story. Suddenly, Howard had the capital to dream even bigger. But he didn't forget what got him here: his values. Even as Starbucks began expanding rapidly, he refused to compromise on what mattered. He protected culture. He prioritized training. He invested in his people. Growth wasn't the goal. Greatness was. Looking back, it's easy to see Howard's rise as a smooth climb. But that's not true. He faced rejection hundreds of times. He had to leave the company he loved to build something on his own. He risked everything: his career, his relationships, his peace of mind. But he never gave up. He believed so deeply in what Starbucks could be that he was willing to fall flat on his face chasing it. And because of that belief, he didn't fall. He flew. Rejection is not the end. Sometimes it's the beginning of something better. Howard Schultz didn't get what he wanted at first, but instead of quitting, he created his own path. He turned a no into a new company. Then, years later, turned that company into the very thing he was once denied. That's not just a comeback. That's vision. That's grit. That's leadership. And for anyone chasing a dream right now, this is your reminder. Sometimes the door you're meant to walk through is the one you build yourself. By the early 1990s, Starbucks had a few dozen locations. People loved the product. But Howard Schultz saw something much deeper taking shape. This wasn't just about coffee anymore. It was about how people felt when they walked through the door. The scent of roasted beans, the smile from the barista, the hum of soft jazz in the background. Every detail mattered. Every sip told a story. Howard understood that Starbucks wasn't just selling a drink. It was selling an experience. And that's where the revolution began. Howard introduced a powerful concept. The third place. What did that mean? Home was the first place. Work was the second. Starbucks would be the third. A space where people could relax, connect, or simply be alone in peace. It would be cozy but professional, quiet but alive, familiar but exciting. You didn't need to buy anything. You didn't need a reservation. All you needed was to walk in. That simple idea changed everything. Suddenly, Starbucks wasn't just part of your morning. It was part of your life. Howard knew that everything about the store design had to support this third-place feeling. He worked with architects and designers to create spaces that felt warm, open, and calming. Soft lights, comfortable seating, ambient music, earth tones, and natural textures. Even the menu boards were designed to feel handcrafted, not corporate. You could walk into a Starbucks anywhere in the world and still feel at home. That consistency built trust, and that trust built a brand. But a brand isn't built by walls. It's built by people. Howard believed that the partners, employees, were the most important part of the Starbucks story. So he invested in them. Every new partner received intensive training, not just on how to make coffee, but how to make people feel welcome, how to remember names, how to listen, how to smile. Howard gave them health benefits even if they only worked part-time. He offered stock options. He made them feel like owners. Because when people feel valued, they treat customers the same way. And that made Starbucks different. In the 1990s, most Americans still didn't know the difference between a cappuccino and a latte. But Starbucks was about to change that. They didn't just put espresso on the menu. They taught customers what it meant, what made it special, why it mattered. It wasn't about being fancy. It was about sharing knowledge and passion. They had a favorite barista. They started meeting friends at Starbucks instead of bars. Coffee became culture, and Starbucks was leading the way. While most companies chased attention through ads and flashy campaigns, Starbucks took a different path. They didn't advertise on TV. They didn't buy billboards. Instead, they let the product and the experience speak for itself. Word of mouth became their most powerful marketing tool. Every new store felt like a local gem, not a chain. Every drink felt personal, and people noticed. By 1995, there were over 650 stores across the US and Canada. But the heart of the company stayed the same. Howard didn't want to be the biggest. He wanted to be the best. Around this time, Starbucks introduced something new, the Frappuccino. It wasn't planned. It wasn't in Howard's original vision. In fact, it was created by a group of baristas at a California store. They blended ice, milk, coffee, and flavoring, and started selling it on their own. Customers loved it. When Howard heard about it, he didn't shut it down. He embraced it. He believed great ideas could come from anywhere, even behind the counter. Frappuccino became one of Starbucks' biggest hits, a drink for all seasons, a symbol of creativity from within. This was a company that listened to its people, to its customers, to the moment. Howard also saw an opportunity to bring Starbucks home. They began selling coffee beans in supermarkets, bottled drinks in convenience stores, coffee makers, mugs, and even music curated from their in-store playlists. Starbucks was no longer just a destination. It was a companion in your daily life. You could wake up to Starbucks in your kitchen, take it with you on the road, drink it at work. They weren't just selling coffee anymore. They were selling a way of life. Starbucks created one of the first customer loyalty cards. It wasn't just a punch card. It was a smart card, tracking preferences, rewarding visits, and gathering insights. Customers felt recognized, valued, known. Years later, this early system would evolve into the Starbucks Rewards app, one of the most successful mobile loyalty platforms ever created. But the seed was planted early. Howard always looked ahead. By the end of the 1990s, Starbucks had gone from a small coffee shop in Seattle to an international brand with thousands of locations. But even more than that, it had become a symbol, a place where students studied, writers wrote, friends met, and moments happened. A place where coffee was an excuse for connection. Starbucks didn't sell coffee. It sold belonging. And at the heart of it all was one idea: create warmth. In the drink, in the store, in the world. This wasn't just business. This was a movement. Howard Schultz didn't just grow a company. He grew a culture. He took a product people once drank without thinking and made it something to feel, to remember, to share. This is how brands become legends. One cup, one story, one experience at a time. This isn't just the story of coffee. It's the story of vision, courage, failure, and heart. From one tiny shop in Seattle to over 30,000 stores worldwide, Starbucks changed how the world connects. But more than that, it left behind lessons that can change your life too. It's easy to look at Starbucks now and only see the success, the logo, the long lines, the billion-dollar brand. But if you followed this story from the beginning, you know the truth. This wasn't easy. It was a road paved with rejection, risk, and relentless belief. It started with 3 friends who loved coffee. It exploded when one man saw what it could become. And now, Starbucks is more than a company. It's a symbol of what's possible. In 2000, after building Starbucks into a global icon, Howard Schultz stepped down as CEO. He passed the torch to a new leader, but remained involved as chairman. He thought the company was ready to grow on its own. But by 2008, something changed. The company had grown fast, maybe too fast. The culture was slipping. The experience wasn't what it used to be. The economy was crashing. And so, Howard came back. Not just to save the brand, but to protect its soul. One of the first things Howard did, he shut down every Starbucks store in America for one afternoon to retrain every barista. Why? Because quality matters. The customer experience matters. And most of all, the people behind the counter matter. He brought the company back to its roots, back to handcrafted drinks, back to human connection, back to why it all started. And customers noticed. Starbucks began to rise again. Over time, Starbucks grew sate. It wasn't just about profits. It was about purpose. The company doubled down on ethical sourcing of coffee beans, supporting farmers in developing countries, environmental sustainability, diversity and inclusion, paying for college for employees, hiring veterans, refugees, and formerly incarcerated individuals. Howard believed that success was not measured only by numbers, but by impact. Starbucks became one of the first companies to say, "We can do well by doing good." And millions of customers respected that. Today, you can find Starbucks in almost every major city on Earth: Tokyo, Paris, Mumbai, Johannesburg, Buenos Aires, Istanbul. And yet, every Starbucks still feels like a Starbucks. Why? Because the heart hasn't changed. It's still about warmth, care, personal service, a drink made just for you. Howard's vision of the third place became a global language, one that needs no translation. Walk into a Starbucks anywhere, and you're a guest. You belong. Starbucks changed more than coffee culture. It changed business. It proved that purpose and profit can coexist. Employees thrive when they feel respected. Customers return when they feel seen. Innovation can come from anywhere. A simple idea, if done with heart, can reach the whole world. Howard Schultz believed that business should be personal, and he was right. So what can we learn from the Starbucks story? Here are 5 lessons that can change your life. Start with passion. Great things begin with love. If you're passionate about something, don't ignore it. Be willing to start small. Starbucks was once just a tiny store. Big dreams are built one step at a time. Believe in your vision, even when others don't. Howard Schultz was told no over 200 times. He didn't give up. Neither should you. Take care of people, your team, your customers, your community. That's where true success lives. Stay true to your values. Trends change, markets shift, but values last forever. Howard Schultz didn't come from wealth. He didn't go to an Ivy League school. He grew up in public housing, watching his father struggle. And yet, he built one of the most respected companies in the world. Why? Because he believed. Because he worked. Because he cared. His story reminds us, you don't have to be born into greatness to create something great. All you need is the courage to dream and the strength to keep going. In 2017, Howard Schultz stepped down for the final time. He left behind a company that had changed the way the world drinks coffee and the way it does business. But he didn't stop dreaming. He began speaking, writing, and advocating for social justice. His voice continued to inspire, because leaders don't retire, they evolve. You may not want to build a coffee empire. Maybe your dream is different. Maybe you want to start a business, become an artist, build a school, or travel the world. It doesn't matter what the dream is. What matters is that you believe in it, that you chase it with everything you have, that you never let fear, failure, or doubt stop you. Because if Starbucks has taught us anything, it's this. Big things can start in small places. Sometimes, all it takes is one cup, one moment, one person who believes. Why not you? Starbucks began with beans. It became a brand, and it ended up a beacon of what's possible when purpose meets passion. Let this be your reminder. Success doesn't begin with money, it begins with meaning. Your story is waiting to be written. Pick up the pen and start. Thank you so much for watching this final part of the Starbucks story. Remember, success doesn't belong to the lucky. It belongs to the bold. And your story, just like Starbucks, can start with a simple idea and grow into some. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to English Chapter. We're here every day with powerful stories to motivate you and help you improve your English in the most inspiring way possible. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep learning, keep growing. We believe in you.